From Kyle, Texas, it's my dad, Marty Seldom Used Reserve Coleman. And from West Orange, New Jersey, it's Casey the Beef Cregan. I'm Parker Coleman, and it's time for the show you've been waiting for all week, Sluggo.
Well, Parker Coleman did not tell the truth. Casey is not in West Orange, New Jersey. You know, Casey, if I'd have thought about it, have him record a new opening tonight, because he and I just recorded the special edition of the Sluggo podcast.
You know, I think secretly I had hoped that he did. You know, like on some of those shows on the radio stations, you hear when someone's filling in. You know, but no one's filling in for me. I'm just in a different state. You know, jumped right out of the frying pan into the fryer here with this COVID nonsense. But yeah, I'm back on the shores of the Calabogie Sound.
Calabogie Sound.
Picking up the wife and kids, basically working this week, but picking them up and gonna drive them back on Saturday. So flew down and driving back.
Oh man, sorry to hear that driving back part.
I love it. I'm a warrior on the roads, aka road warrior.
Well, I love to drive too, or I did at one time, probably when I was about your age. One day, when I lived in Austin, I decided, I got out of the military. I decided to take a road trip that day from Austin, Texas. And I went down to the border and went across, got some gas in a little town outside of El Paso, which is a story in itself. And by 9 o'clock that night, I was in New Mexico.
Wow.
Calling my brother from a payphone. This is how long ago this was, right? Calling my brother from a payphone saying, hey, guess where I'm at? I'm in Alamogordo, New Mexico. It was about a 600-mile trip. You know, just decided to take a road trip one day back in
just because. Yeah. Why not?
You could do that back in those days. Hey, you know, we're only on our 8th show here, but we got some pretty loyal listeners that I wanted to give a shout out to, listeners, viewers. Holly Haley Vasquez. Holly Haley, tell me how to say her name. I don't know. I looked through Parker's yearbook the other day, and there were so many names and pronunciations. I'm like, I'm old, and I don't know how to say your name. But thank you, Holly Haley, very much. You're usually the first one to like our show, so we appreciate that. Kevron Harris, Sean Flood, Adger Turner, and Aaron Kahn. Thank you guys all very much for the likes. You can do that again this week. It will not hurt our feelings, will it, Beef?
Not even a little bit. We appreciate the patronage and the loyalty and all that, and we hope to keep this thing interesting and fun. Sorry, I said it. But that's the point of it, and God willing, I think we're going to break some news here. It's not necessarily breaking, but we're gonna break some news for our show, and I think we're a little bit. I'm a little excited because it means that there is probably going to be some football going on this season, which means we're going to have a show, and we're going to have a lot of fun things to talk about, and from all over the country. So.
Yeah, usually the news breaks like 5 minutes after we finish, and we're like, oh, man, come on. But speaking of news, we have a Facebook group that we talked about last week, and we've added about 85 members this week. We're up to 635-ish or so, 85 or 90 members. So it's moving quite along. There's quite a bit of activity. I checked it out a few minutes before I jumped on here with the beef, and lots of information there, and some of that information we're going to talk about in just a minute. And I wanted to take a second to talk about our good friend Turgy at the Pit Boss Sauce Company. He had a big announcement, and he's been doing this mostly at home, making that fine sauce that we've both had and are looking forward to again. I feel like a little kid. You know, remember when you were a kid and you waited for the mail every day before bills started coming with your name on it, right? You waited for the mail and you're so excited. I'm keep waiting for that sauce Turgy said he's going to put in the mail. But have to understand, the man is moving into a facility. He is trying to build a website. Turgy, our sauce can wait, not too long, but it can wait. Get your business going, and we're here to help you, man. The Pit Boss Sauce Company on Facebook.
I was really excited to see his breaking news on Friday, I believe it was. I logged in. It was a little choppy for me. I think it was my internet, but I got the gist of it. And we appreciate the partnership that he and us have, and we wish him nothing but the best. And we'd love to send people to him because trust me, this sauce is legit, and I've only tried one. So I'm excited to get the next one whenever it comes. Like I said, like you said, he's got things going on. He's got irons in the fire. So we can be on the back burner for a little bit. But if I have to buy some first, I'll do it. But excited for his future, and excited for his philanthropic ventures as well. He's planning to give some back. So it's awesome. Really, really good guy. Really, really good sauce. Excited to be partnered up with him.
Yeah, that's how it all works, right? We mentioned his sauce. He sends us some sauce. He's helping somebody else out. Just kind of, that's
Pay it forward.
The world goes round and round. But there's a Black's Barbecue in Lockhart that I'd like to go to. Terzi, I'm taking your sauce around the state of Texas. You've been to Kyle, Texas. We've taken you out to Driftwood, and now we're going to Lockhart, which are the two of the biggest barbecue places in the state of Texas. Hey, Beef, sports are back.
Ooh.
And I'm very happy about that, to watch baseball. But the thing that even makes me happier than sports being back in general is what it's meant to my boy. He's moped around here since March for the most part, and I've done what I could, but, I'm a little bit old to be doing much physically with a 13-year-old, though we still throw the ball around the yard on occasion. And I shoot some hoops with him, though. He doesn't like that very much. But if you could have seen his just the pep in his step when the Astros came on the other day, it was a whole different kid. He's walking, bouncing, talking up, down, talking to his mom, telling mom what's happening in the game. Him and I are watching back and forth. Me and him are looking at baseball stats from 10 years ago. He's a whole different kid when sports are back. So as I said in a long podcast that I did by myself, it seemed long, it was probably about 10 minutes, is don't tell me sports don't matter, because they matter. They matter to my boy and a lot of boys and girls across the country. So sports are back.
When you told me that too, about Parker bouncing up and down and just being so excited, it's kind of a metaphor for my life too, because when sports are on, I feel like a 13-year-old kid, because nothing else matters. You have your teams, you have your loyalties. I'm not a Giants fan, but I do have a Wayne Gallman shirt on tonight. But you have your loyalties, you have your people that you root for, and everything else, all the problems in the world kind of goes away, for lack of a better cliche. And it's just fun. So having baseball back, it's fantastic. I happen to be a big hockey fan, a kid from the Northeast. That's what we have here. That's coming back tonight, which is Wednesday night, with the season officially restarting on the 1st. Man, it's chock full of fun stuff. I'm trying to get out of here early on Saturday so I can get back for the Ranger game on Saturday night. So it's awesome. So it is, having Parker like that, it's like a metaphor for life, man. I am the 13-year-old. I am Parker.
He and I have had more, and I'm going to call it quality conversation. Look, we're not splitting the atom, and I'm not, teaching him how to treat women, which I try and do every day. But he and I have had more substantive conversations since baseball came back than we've had since March, right? Because he's been, as I said, a little down, not much to do, can't see his friends, can't see anybody, sitting in his room with his 2 old parents trying to figure out, what is this, like everybody else. But he's only 13. But as soon as those Astros came on, hey, we're sitting there, he's looking at the iPad, I'm looking at my phone, we're going through baseball stats and baseball references, what happened in 1962, and when did this guy do that? So many great conversations. And one of the crazy things about the Astros, this is not a baseball podcast, but I think you probably find this funny because it happened to the Astros, right? We look up. Our favorite road trip last year was to Corpus Christi. We went to see Seth Beer. And in that game, we ran across Zach Irwin, was on the other team, right, on the other side. And they actually faced each other late in the game. But we look up at the Astros last night. Half of Corpus Christi is playing in Houston. There's 6 guys that were in AA last year. The Astros in the first 5 games have set a record for debuts. They've had 8. They got a guy pitching last night, and now the one starting today, single A last year, pitching for the Houston Astros.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's not like they're pitching for the Marlins or somebody that's having a
Exactly.
down year. They're pitching for a team that perennially competes recently and has built the right way, cheating notwithstanding. But they have, in the last 10 years, 5 years, I guess, they've really built everybody, Altuve, Correa, all coming through the system. They're to have these guys playing. I know double-A to the league is kind of the jump that everyone makes, but we could go on the baseball podcast, me and Parker and you and whoever. He can do the history stuff, but I'll tell you, I do love the college baseball, the pro baseball. It's awesome. It's just so fun to be back. I'm sorry. My legs are dancing.
That's actually my point, is that these are things we talked about during the game because sports were on. If sports weren't on, we wouldn't be talking about that. But sports matter. As I said in that podcast, sports matter, at least they do, to this father and son. All right, Beef, let's get on with that big announcement prior to us going live here. The ACC has decided what they're going to do and when they're going to do it, theoretically, as someone pointed out. It said, hey, isn't it a sure thing? Hey, it's 2020. Nothing is a sure thing, right? Not a thing. Right. I could walk out of here after we finish this podcast and something totally different be out there. But I didn't know how you want to do this, how you wanted to run it down. Did you want to go through a list, or did you want to do one at a time? But I kind of found the interesting thing starting around D and E in this list. But let me walk through this for a little bit for you. The season's first games will take place the week of September 7th through 12th. So that's a little bit later than originally scheduled, but not bad at all. The 2020 scheduling model includes 11 games, 10 plus 1, 10 conference games and one non-conference. All non-conference game opponents selected by the respective school must be played in the home state of the ACC institution. I found this really interesting. I mean, what is like Boston College? They're going to play what, MIT or what? I'm just okay.
UMass. That's it. That's what they're playing. They're playing UMass. That's the only option.
And that's a W. That's probably something better than they usually play in non-conference, though, for the most part. The 11 games will be played over 13 weeks. Each team will have at least two open dates. And this is where it gets good, folks. There will be one division. Now, let's talk about this. Yay. That's my reaction. What's your reaction?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ACC championship game could be, once again, theoretically, Clemson versus Louisville. Or is somebody that you play in the regular season that may have a better record than what they're dishing out on the coastal side, but you're able to play it now. So it's going to be the two best teams in the conference, which is awesome. I love it.
And that's the way it should be in my mind, right? You shouldn't have a 5-3 team from the other division or a 4-4 in the ACC playing Clemson. If you have, a 9-3 or 10-2 team, that, got to look on the bright side. And to me, that's really, really a bright side about this terrible time we're going through. Also very interesting. Notre Dame will play a 10-game conference schedule and be eligible to compete in the 2020 ACC football championship game. I am torn on this because I obviously recognize what Notre Dame and the Notre Dame name means. Despite what Clemson fans and ACC fans want to say, it means something, right? It brings eyeballs and attention to the conference. I don't like it. I don't like that. Theoretically, they could walk away with the ACC championship and not even be in the ACC, technically. But it adds something to it. And Clemson and Notre Dame could play twice this year.
It does add a little legitimacy to the conference schedule, too. And strength of schedule anyway, that's one big thing from our friends in the SEC, like to make sure that they tell us every year that the ACC conference is down, but having Notre Dame is going to be a top 10 team. They got Ian Book back. They are going to be solid top to bottom. Are they a top 10? Yeah, I think they definitely are. So now you're bringing a top 10 team into the ACC to play 10 games. The best part, I know we're probably going to get to it, I don't mean to jump the gun, is that they're sharing the revenue from their NBC TV contract.
Yes.
That's huge. I mean, that right there kind of almost elevates the ACC into what the SEC has with that money. So we're going to have more money to spend at Clemson. This is fantastic. But on the Notre Dame thing, I'm not a fan. I grew up in New Jersey, where you're either a Notre Dame fan or a Penn State fan or a Syracuse fan. I grew up a Miami fan, big Manny Diaz fan as a 9-year-old. Oh no, not Manny Diaz. But big Miami fan. So I hated Notre Dame from the time that I grew up, because most people in New Jersey know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knew someone that went there. Like, that's how they became a Notre Dame fan. So I'm not a Notre Dame fan. I kind of hate them with the white hot intensity of 1,000 suns, but it's nice for the conference.
So you had the choice. You could be a Catholic or a convict, and you chose convict.
Which is ironic, because I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school, and I was definitely the convict of all.
Yeah, I'm not a Notre Dame fan, but I recognize what they can do for the ACC and the cachet they bring to the conference, at least in part. I guess what I wish is, get off my lawn. I want you in the conference or out. I want you in or out, right? But given the circumstances of this year, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think it's great too, and I think I'm in the minority when I say I want Notre Dame in a conference. I don't care what they're doing. I really don't, because I just don't think the relevancy is there anymore from where they were in the 90s, and maybe that's going out on a limb. I know they're competitive. They're definitely a top 10, top 15 caliber perennial elite team. Absolutely. Give them their due, no doubt. Are they a top 4 team? I truly don't believe it. Were they worthy of it when they played a couple years ago? I thought so. In my opinion, I thought they were, because who else was there? However, they don't play in a conference. They don't play a conference championship game, but they play a tough schedule on paper every year. They're playing Big Ten teams. They're playing 6 ACC teams, usually the upper echelon of it. I don't have – and then the Pac-12 USC, who's perennially good. They've been down the last couple of years. So I don't have any problem with them, and I've softened my stance on them anyway about my hatred of them, but as I've gotten older and softer. But I think it's great for us this year, and I say us meaning a fan of a team in the ACC conference, to do it. Why not? I think it's worthwhile, and that whole sticking point of the money thing, they signed off on it. It's great, but I don't care if they're in the ACC going forward. I don't mind if they're a men's soccer team, basketball team, whatever. I don't care if their football team's in the ACC or not.
The thing that it kind of strikes me as, I don't want to say desperation. That might be too strong of a word for Notre Dame. But did you ever think Notre Dame was going to give up money? I mean,
no.
To be a part of the ACC, they were probably desperate. They realized, they looked around and say, nobody's playing independence, non-conference games. What are we going to do? And so, Notre Dame is in a position, because of COVID, obviously, where they had to give up their TV money for the home games. That is just a capper for crazy first 7 months of 2020.
It kind of makes sense, right? I mean, nothing surprises us anymore in 2020. Yeah. I think Notre Dame going there is the capper, is the cherry on top. But you're right. What was their option? Their option was, and the ACC probably just said, "This is what we are doing. If you want to join us." It's John Swofford, the ACC commissioner's last stand. So, hey, this is what we want if you want to come play with us. Or you can play Liberty 3 times a year and New Mexico State 2 times. What are they going to
BYU.
Yeah. I mean, they were looking face to face with Liberty, New Mexico State. I think UMass isn't in the conference either. And BYU 2 times each. A home and home with each.
Man.
Come on now.
Well, you know what? If that's the case, I don't think the ACC got enough. They should ask for a couple of million on top of the TV money. Be like a gangster, John Swofford. If you're still in the office, you're probably not even in the office anymore.
He's done.
Hey, the ACC championship game will be December 12th or 19th, so nice little week before Christmas, maybe. And again, it's the top 2 teams. No matter, there's only one division, so. That's exciting to me. I had to think of a word there. That's exciting.
I thought you were going with the I word. I thought you were going to go.
I was close, man. I can't afford the I word. My kid's got to go to college in a few years, hopefully. That's exciting to me that at least the two teams with the best record are going to be in the ACC championship game, either December 12th or 19th.
It's fantastic. It is. That's probably the most excitable part for me. I guess exciting part for me is that there's no grid anymore. There's no tiebreak. I mean, there's probably maybe a tiebreaker coming in who's playing who, because we're missing some. You're only playing 10 games. You're not playing 14, 15, whatever it is, to play everybody. But it's awesome, man. It's great. There's going to be no arguments. It's going to be the top two teams. You're not going to say, oh, well, we were 9-2 in the Atlantic, but we finished behind 11-0 Clemson, and 4-3 Pittsburgh is playing for the championship. You're not getting that this year. You're getting number one versus number two. Boom.
But where you are getting, I don't know if you saw the fine print. It's going to be based on the winning percentage, right? Because they're expecting somebody to have 12 games and somebody to have 8. And we were 9-0. We were 9-1, and you only played 6 games, but you're 6-0, and so there's going to be arguments. I mean, sports. What is sports without arguments, right? So there could be arguments. There likely will be, but I did notice that it said based on winning percentage.
Oh, that's terrible. I mean, I know we're seeing it right now in Major League Baseball with the Marlins, where they're missing games because of an outbreak. And I know we're not. My wife even tonight was saying something about this bubble in Rutgers. I think we may touch on it later. They had 15 players on campus party, AKA a bubble. You know, someone probably came from outside and infected some of those guys. There's gonna be something like that happening, and that stinks that we're going to go with 3-0 Louisville team and a 10-0, 10-1 whoever, Wake Forest team. They're going to be playing.
Clemson is playing 1-0 Wake Forest in the ACC championship. 10-1 Florida State has been eliminated, right? I mean,
exactly. I hate that fine print stuff.
The thing about Rutgers is, I mean, let's face it, it's going to happen, right? I mean, what is a party of football players with only football players? I mean, you know, that's no fun. Somebody from the outside's got to be there, unless they got females on the football team at Rutgers. You know, I mean, I don't know. It's going to happen. It's going to happen in MLB. I don't know if we're expecting Marlins level happening in MLB, but to think that it wouldn't happen somewhere, you know, I heard the NBA actually has the right thought or right system or right protocols in place. They're all kind of in their own bubble. That's not going to happen. It's not happening in MLB because they're traveling. It's not going to happen in college football
because they're traveling.
For sure.
Yep, the NHL the same way. The NHL had 928 tests, no viruses. They're in 2 cities, but when they come together to the one city, when it gets down to it, are they going to run into problems? I mean, I guess it's a wait and see, obviously, but we don't know. This thing sucks.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know if we'll ever know, and that's the sad part. That we don't know if it'll ever be the same. You know, people keep talking about, well, let's just cancel it for this year, but who knows? You know, maybe next year, maybe 5 years, may never be the same, which is really a sad thought. So let's move on to something a little more exciting and a little more fun, at least this week. Last week wasn't so good for Clemson on the recruiting trail, but this week, Mack Brown's fence is a little weak because the 4th out of the top 5th North Carolina ranked recruit, he's not the 4th to go to Clemson. I phrased that really bad. He's the 4th to not go to North Carolina. Payton Page, 4-star, or is he 5-star? I've seen both.
It depends on what recruiting service you're looking at.
I saw him on Rivals. He was the 30th ranked player in the nation. That's what I care about more than whether he's 4 or 5, because he's right on the edge either way. So Payton Page, defensive lineman in the mold of Big Dex Lawrence, commits to the Tigers last night. What do you know about Mr. Page?
Oh man, I think I said it a couple weeks ago, but I really liked him, and I'm not going to use the hip swivel word again because he's a defensive lineman, but he uses his low pad level. The things that I read about him yesterday and today say that you'd probably be doing him a disservice by trying to compare him to Dexter Lawrence because he's not quite as big. Well, who is? Dexter Lawrence is like 6'8", 345 as a sophomore in high school. He was just a beast. I remember walking by him at a Clemson baseball game, this little baby face and a high-pitched voice saying hello to me. And it was like, no, man, you could eat me. But Payton Page looks like, they're saying he's raw is what I was trying to say short-windedly. In the aspect that he's not quite where Dexter Lawrence was coming out. He's not quite that fifth star guy, that 5'9" that Rivals or 6'0" has, but he's more in the light of a Grady Jarrett, not the fact that Grady was a 2-star. They're saying more Grady Jarrett as a junior at Clemson. Yes, he was an All-American, a star. But as far as just being low to the ground, really he's going to be a space eater. He's going to be able to – who are they going to double team? They got DeMonte Capehart on one side. They got Brian Breezy on the other side. And then they're going to have linebackers. That's what really stuck out to me about the analysis of Page is that he's going to be one of those guys that's going to make linebackers look good. Linebackers that maybe aren't necessarily the highly touted ones because he's going to take on a center and a guard and leave a linebacker one-on-one with a running back or a quarterback. So it's exactly what we like to see with the Brent Venables offense, who loves to blitz the linebackers. You're going to have a kid up front that's going to eat space. And it's awesome. It was a really good get. I thought it was a necessary get with the losses that they've had, the decommitments that they've had the last couple of days. And I think he's going to be a good one. And like I said, I don't know. He's 17, 18 years old, but he looks like a man. He plays like a man on the short film that I watched. Low pads. I love him. I love him. I'm a big fan. I was so excited I hit my microphone.
Hey, well, like I said, the 30th ranked player in Rivals, that's pretty good. I don't care, 4th, 5th star, whatever. Stars do mean something, but he's right on the cusp. If he's not a 5-star, we'll call him a 5-star light. I hate to call a guy that big light, but he's a light 5-star. So Dabo took another one from Mack Brown. Now, I have been critical of – not critical. Well, yes, critical of the hype surrounding Mack's recruiting class. As I mentioned, he building a fence around North Carolina, but 4 of the top 5 recruits in the state have gone to other schools besides North Carolina. But in Mack's defense, he signed some really good players. He has 10 of the top 18 in North Carolina. So I want to be fair in my analysis. Now, I know Clemson didn't recruit, at least according to Rivals, a lot of those guys signed by Mack, but the fact is Mack has 10 of the top 18 in the state of North Carolina. Pretty darn good.
He's doing a lot better than past regimes there. There's no question, and it hasn't been this good recruiting-wise since he was there last. So, yes, we may be critical of him not getting the top 5 kids from the or 4 of the top 5 kids from the state, but he's getting who he wants, who he needs, for the most part, who he wants. They wanted Page. And something I read said that they were making a really late push almost up until that 6 o'clock announcement time yesterday to kind of keep them home. It's tough for Clemson or anybody to go into the triad, that Raleigh, Winston-Salem, and Chapel Hill area and pull a kid, but they did again from up there. So that's a big get. But Mack is doing great. Sorry, I almost brought that back to Clemson. But Mack's doing a really nice job, and they need something. And I said it a couple weeks ago, the ACC needs something. They need something to talk about with another team from the conference. And I think that with this recruiting numbers and the hype that he's getting from Rivals and 24/7 and whoever else is out there, is Scout still out there? I don't even know. That it's worthy. He's worthy of the hype and the talk.
Well, and they've got a quarterback. I mean, that's what drives things today, right? Is a quarterback who can spin the ball, and Sam Howell can do that, at least if he repeats or improves on his freshman season. Now, I've been waiting all show to talk about this next guy, and you let me know this. I wasn't even aware. I don't know how it slipped my mind because I wake up every day wanting to talk about Manny Diaz and what a great job he's doing in Miami. So tell me a little bit about Miami, what they're doing on the recruiting trail.
Well, another thing per Rivals. I spend a lot of time on Rivals and reading Mike Farrell, especially since we started the show, and realized that I will have to cover a little bit more recruiting, and we're covering a little bit more recruiting than maybe I'm used to normally in my passive nature. But Mike Farrell from Rivals said around 85% of the Hurricanes class is from South Florida, and Manny Diaz is killing it. That's a direct quote from Mike Farrell. Well, the point that I wanted to make to it is, yes, it was a little bit of a rib to you because that's your boy and he is pretty, but that doesn't necessarily translate to being a good football coach. But that's key in Florida, and that's what Jimmy Johnson did, and that's what that Schnellenberger did to turn that program around. That's a small school, 3,500 kids at that school, a private school. People don't really know that all that often.
Right.
But to get 85% of his players right from there, Carroll City, Miami Northeast. I was talking about Immokalee the other day. Man, they just, there's a lot of talent down there. And if they can keep half of those kids or 85% of those kids that are 3, 4, maybe even touch a 5-star in Miami, if they can coach them up now, that's a big if, because they've perennially got a lot of players from that area. If they can coach them up, the U might be back pretty soon.
I'm scared. Well, here's what I was going to say. I did read something, and I don't remember the name. So, as Beef said, we're just getting back into recruiting, or for me, getting into it. For a long time, I didn't talk about recruiting because it was so frustrating, right? He's going here, he's going there, he's going somewhere tomorrow. I've committed, quote, to 6 schools. But I read the other day with Miami's latest commitment, a highly ranked defensive back, I think we talked about him last week, that there was a 5-star. And I noticed this when I looked at the first guy, the other guy, there was a 5-star who wasn't considering Miami, but who was from that area. I don't remember exactly Miami, but the general area, as you mentioned, that now was reconsidering that he could be part of the class. So, this is the old CJ Spiller deal, right? Hey, it's okay to go to Clemson. I'm a big star and I can go to Clemson. So maybe it's trending back towards Miami, and maybe they're going to have a class that even Manny Diaz can't screw up.
That's yet to be seen, but we will see. I do have a little breaking news too that I just got off the wire a moment ago, just to kind of surprise you. But of course, again, Clemson centric, but they just got a commitment, verbal commitment from a four-star offensive lineman, Dietrich Pennington. I haven't watched a thing on him and didn't even know he had an offer. So, but he's another lineman coming to Death Valley. So
nice, a 4-star too, huh?
4-star from 24/7, number 9 offensive guard in the nation, and the number 1 player from Tennessee.
And we thought the breaking news was going to be the ACC schedule, but actually you did have breaking news.
It came across my phone, and I was like, "Oh, we're talking recruiting. I could bring that up."
Very, very cool. So 2 4-stars in 2 days, not bad. And that was gonna be one of my things to talk about. I kind of had it as a mental note, is that Clemson seems to run in cycles, right? They'll get 2, 3 in a week, and then go 4 months with nothing, and then another one here and another one there, then 2 months without anything. So seems like we're on a good cycle right now, or at least Clemson is.
Definitely, and like I said, I didn't even know. I think this kid got lost in the mix here because everyone was so excited, and he's a lineman, so maybe you don't get nearly as excited for an offensive lineman, but you're getting the number 1 player out of Tennessee. That's another thing that Dabo's just going into another neighboring state and just being like, yeah, I'll take him. T. Higgins and Amari Rogers say hello too, but he got lost in the mix because yesterday everyone's talking Payton Page, all excited about this kid. Dietrich Pennington got lost in it. So, but that's another steal for them.
Hey, those are 2 big gets because I don't know much about recruiting, but what I do know is you can't have enough offensive linemen and you can't have enough defensive linemen because they get hurt all the time. all that weight on those joints, and things happen in the trenches and knees and elbows and arms and whatever else. And they get hurt all the time. And as I understand it, again, not a recruiting guru, I understand that offensive line is a hard one to judge and rate. And, somebody's 3-star may turn out to play 12 years in the NFL, or 2-star. So.
Yeah, Zach Martin, probably one of the best guards in the NFL from Notre Dame, was I think a 2-star recruit for them. So I could be wrong there, but I know he wasn't the 5-star all world recruit. Played with Mike Golick Jr. Out there in Notre Dame, but he's now probably the best, highest paid guard in the country, in the world, or whatever, in the NFL. So yeah, it's such a crapshoot with them. You probably have more of a chance with the quarterbacks, the running backs, the receivers, even the defensive players too. So.
Hey, something you put on the list, and we had this as a subject in case we had a few extra minutes. So let's give this a talk. High school seniors skipping their senior season if the season is canceled. We're finding out now that college football players are now doing this trend, not with canceled seasons, but they're skipping college to work out for the NFL because they don't want to participate in a COVID-ravaged season for one reason or another. And you mentioned Corey Foreman's doing this, and I think it was Tony Grimes at UNC who's skipping his senior season of high school to enroll in UNC. What are your thoughts on this?
Ryan Linthicum is another one, the number 1 center in the country that's committed to Clemson. He's going to be skipping his senior season because of Maryland. When I sent it to you last week, it was kind of only a couple people that were on this list. Now it seems like it's going to be commonplace. A lot of kids, I say a lot of kids, but there's a bunch of kids that are going to transfer to IMG Academy or schools like that know that they're going to be playing somewhat of a schedule, whether or not it's national or even in Florida. I know IMG generally plays national schedule, but what other choice do they have? I think I hemmed and hawed on this early when I sent it to you. Just, wow, this is weird that they're going to be. It's that same conversation you and I had a couple weeks ago, that how are they going to enroll early into school if they're not finished with high school? They have 2 weeks, like Grimes did, has 2 weeks to finish a semester of high school. But like you said, he could have been ahead, getting a couple classes is all he needed. But it's now seemingly the trend. This is, if they're not going to IMG, and how many kids can IMG possibly take, and actually play. And so it's going to be the trend with states like Maryland, states like Virginia. West Virginia also lessened their schedule for high school sports. I think it's going to be the norm now. I mean, of course they're going to sit out. If they move the season to the spring, and they graduate in December and they were planning to enroll early, yeah, they're going to do. Maybe even a center like Linthicum, who's going to Clemson, who knows he's probably going to redshirt. Why not get on campus this semester early? So maybe you avoid that redshirt. I've flip-flopped in the week since I've sent this to you, but I think it's probably the right move. Now, a kid like Corey Foreman, my last point here, my kid like Corey Foreman, we don't know where he's going yet. And the fact that he can't get on campus, they're saying that visits are a big thing, and he can't take any. Whether or not it's USC or Oregon or even Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, whoever's in the mix from LSU, that'll be the interesting part, I guess, for a player like him, where you don't even know where he's going with. With a kid like Grimes, a kid like Linthicum, you know where they're going. And if they were early enrollees anyway, they were going to be there in December. So it's not that big a deal as I initially thought.
Well, here's the thing that I thought about when I read the Linthicum story, and almost said the I word, by the way. Here's the thing that I thought about. The thing that I thought about, if you read that story that I think I posted in the discussion group, is that high schools were recruiting him, right? High schools that were going to have seasons are now recruiting high schoolers who aren't going to have seasons. And the first thought is that ethical? Is it legal? So many thoughts, but this has been such a crazy year. I just kind of went, oh, okay. Okay. A high school guy is getting recruited by other high schools. I'm like, okay. It just weird stuff is happening in 2000.
That is funny. That is funny because it's a big thing back where I live in New Jersey that everyone, and they made a big deal about it. But in North Jersey, I was talking about it a couple of weeks ago about how North Jersey, the parochial schools are the ones that are the top teams in the state, and the public schools complained forever because the private schools were in public school conferences. So you'd have like 4 or 5 public schools and then play a parochial. They've since switched it, so now it's all the parochial schools are playing against each other, and they're the higher leagues. Blah 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 blah. I say that to say the public schools always claimed that private schools recruited. That was always the thing. And I remember my high school coach from the school that I went to, which was a basketball power in New Jersey for quite some time, used to say, well, I'm not going to 7th and 8th grade CYO basketball leagues to tell kids to come to my school. And if I recruited, this 6'3" pudgy dude wouldn't be my biggest guy. So it takes some. It's interesting. God, now I'm thinking about it every time. Do I owe $1? But it is kind of funny now because ethics, I guess, is out the window with COVID-19. I mean, why not ask a kid if he wants to come to your school and pay? Because most of these are private schools anyway that these kids are trying to come to. IMG recruits anyway. They do. They ask you to come. So that is recruiting by the letter of the law. But these other private schools, like some kids leave in Arkansas to play in California, I think I saw. And how is that happening? Because they're probably not moving the family, right? So it's probably just the kid who's going to move in with the head coach.
Who knows?
There's a lot of logistics that I need to know. And I don't.
I need to know, and I don't. I think that you pretty much summed up my life right there. Hey, Beef, did you know we had a store with Sluggo gear in it out there?
What?
Interwebs. Yeah,
I did.
We do. And you sent me a really cool picture that I'm going to put probably right in this spot of Slider Cregan in his Sluggo shirt. And you too can, whoever you are, can order a Sluggo shirt or phone case or mask, whatever you want. We got it in that store. But I don't want to see Beef in the spandex Sluggo pants. All you got to do is go to teespring.com/stores/Sluggo-store, and I'll put that in the show notes, and I'll put it up on the screen somewhere around this area on the podcast. And check it out. Support us. We have high hopes for a live show at some point, and reality hit us in the face. Live shows are not free, and we are not rich. So help us out with the Sluggo store. I'll put a link in the show notes, and just help us out. Make a few bucks each transaction.
It's kind of I'm not sure the right word, but yes, I bought a shirt for my son, and so I'm paying myself to pay myself. So it's kind of didn't really work out in my favor, but I paid whatever the money was for a 4T shirt for my 2-year-old to make $3, whatever it was, whatever the margin was. But but it's great stuff. High quality shirts. Marty's got one on right now. Mine's waiting in the front of my house when I get back to New Jersey. Can't wait for it. I'll have it on next week. Not one of my Clemson players on a shirt of an NFL team, but it is good stuff. And there's all sorts of stuff. There's hoodies. I think we're going to probably work on some polos and things in the future. So we're going to add to it, no doubt. But there's a lot of everything that you need. Performance shirts, anything that you need is on there currently now. And it does definitely help us currently try to get live shows and bring you great content. And that's really what our goal is here.
Yeah, we realize we're not going to get rich, and that wasn't our intent. Our intent was to be two guys talking college football, which we love, and we'll continue to do whether anybody buys a shirt or not. Anybody besides Casey, that is. Obviously, I bought one too. So if anybody buys a shirt or not, we'll still do the show, but there's some improvements we'd like to make down the line once we figure out what we're doing, which should be about November.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Marty. For the live show that we're talking about doing, I know we're going to test it and see how it is, but it's going to be interactive too, right? We're going to have a way to to get some listeners maybe in to send us some questions, which is really exciting to me, and that's awesome. We can use our Facebook and Seldom Used Reserve network there to get out there to make it interactive, and we want to hear from folks. We want to hear from you, and ask questions, ask dumb questions. We'll go out on limbs. That's what I told him from the start. I'm going out on limbs this year, which is not in my personality. I'm going to make hot takes that are going to be wrong, and I love it, and I'll eat crow, and I can't wait for it.
You mean, I think I just got the show title, Ask Dumb Guys Dumb Questions. You mean like your hot take on Lincoln Riley that I was going to talk about this week, but we'll save that for next week.
Perfect.
I broke down some numbers on the Oklahoma quarterbacks that I think you'll find interesting. I did. Dang it.
You almost got through the whole show.
And this is how good our college football discussion group on Facebook is. I typed out that word and somebody dinged me for it right away this afternoon saying, nice choice of words, right? So that's how it goes for me. Hey, Beef, we'll close it out tonight. I know it's been a long couple of days for you. We're Slaughter Cregan, reminding you what it's like to be the father of a 2-year-old. I've been there, and I've been there. So don't miss that part of it. But hey, I can tell you what, you'll get through it. Then he'll be projectile vomiting on you. You'll get through that. All that time where he's sick every day, he goes to school and gets sick. And then it'll all get better. He'll be like Parker. He'll be 13 or 14, and you'll be talking sports with him. It'll be all worth it, buddy.
It's all worth it now, as much as we're having. It's only been a couple days, but we're good. He's just not sleeping. He doesn't think he wants to play all night, which is what a boy should do, right? But yeah, we're good. We're good. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I'll be honest with you.
All right. Hey, Beef, have producer Amy take us out.
Producer Amy, how'd we do tonight?
I think that sounds pretty good.
Welcome into a special edition of the Sluggo podcast and show. Today I have a special guest. Casey and I have talked about him often on the podcast and the show. And sitting with me today is my almost 14-year-old son. Can't believe I'm saying that. Parker Coleman. Parker, welcome into the show.
Welcome. This is my show now.
This is his show now, he says. Parker, as I said, is almost 14, and he wanted to talk about the craziness of the 2007 college football season, which, as his dad, I found interesting because he was only a year old then. But he loves to look at historical facts about sports and historical seasons. When I told him Casey and I were doing a college football podcast, he offered to talk about the crazy 2007 season, which many people remember for one game that happened in week 1, but a lot of other crazy stuff happened. So Parker, why don't you start off talking about what you want to talk about the 2007 college football season?
The easiest way to do this is in chronological order of what happened. Now, as my dad pointed out, most people just know this for Appalachian State upsetting Michigan 34-32. After this, Michigan went from being a top 5 team and a championship contender to falling completely out of the top 25. They lost to Oregon by 32 the next week and only went 9-4 in the season, not even getting close to winning the championship that they were talking about.
And if I remember correctly, I don't know how much you studied that game, but Michigan actually had a chance to win to kick a field goal.
Yeah,
right?
and they blocked it, and they almost took it back to the end zone.
Yeah. And this was, as I did my research, because I knew this game was going to come up, Appalachian State was only the second FCS team to ever beat a ranked FBS team, and they were the first FCS team to beat a top 5 FBS team. Michigan was ranked number 5 when they played.
Yeah. Most people just know 2007 from that, but a lot of other stuff happened. We go to week 2, a minor upset. South Carolina upsets number 11 ranked at that time, Georgia, 16-12. Week 3, number 9 Louisville gets upset by Kentucky, 40-34. An Andre Woodson touchdown to Steven Johnson with 28 seconds left is what gave Kentucky the win. Also, another fun note, Mike Gundy's "Come at Me, I'm a Man, I'm 40" happened somewhere around this time.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. So that means he's a man. He's 53 or so now.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there are a couple of other rants from head coaches, like fat little girlfriends or something like
Mike
that.
Leach and the Fat Little Girlfriends.
And there was another one I forgot, but I think Fat Little Girlfriends was 2007.
I
I'm not
think
sure.
it was the Colorado coach who talked about this in intramurals. I can't remember it. Dan Hawkins, I think his name was.
So this isn't intramurals. This is Division I football or something like
This
that.
is Division I football, brother, or something to that effect.
Then in week 4, we see Michigan again upset number 10 Penn State 14-9, despite their week 1 upset and apparently a lot of stuff going on in the locker room. They still came together, and Penn State would end up falling apart, and they would also end up going 9-4 in the season. So they went from being top 10 to not really being ranked, if I remember correctly. I think the coaches had them as number 25, but the actual poll didn't. So there were 9 upsets for top 25 teams in weeks 2 through 4, which is somewhat normal for college football. But in week 5, 8 top 25 teams lost on their own, and half of them were top 10, and 3 of them were top 5. Rutgers, who was number 10, lost to Maryland.
Casey's not going to like Rutgers losing.
Well, he has to get used to it because of what's sort of become of their football program. South Florida, West Virginia. South Florida won 21-13. Unranked Auburn beat Florida, number 4 Florida, 20-17. And then Colorado beat number 3 Oklahoma 27-24. South Florida is one of the first stories we'll talk about. Their first football game was in 1997, and they even I'm pretty sure in 2000 was their first time being in Division I. And I'm almost 100% sure they've never been ranked before. They were number 18 when they beat number 5 West Virginia, and now this is sort of like a Cinderella story. And did you know that their first team meeting was under a tree?
No, I didn't.
And they really didn't have any football facilities when they first started out. So for them to go from right there to 10 years later being ranked in Division I, that they really improved a lot.
It was a big story at the time. I remember they kept saying how this team was it was a great place to start a program. It was in Florida where a lot of the recruits were, blah, 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 blah.
So LSU and USC, they're the number 1 and number 2 teams by the time we reach week 6. LSU is playing Florida, Tim Tebow. LSU and USC were undefeated, but USC was playing Stanford. Stanford went 1-11 the year before, and they were 1-3 this year. USC was favored by 41, and they won 42-0 in 2006. Also, it was the Stanford's backup quarterback that was playing, as their starting quarterback had a seizure the week before, and he was ruled out. And Richard Sherman, the Richard Sherman, was playing wide receiver, and part of what happened, how Stanford won, was it was like 4th and 20, and Richard Sherman caught a pass, and it was in the inside of the 10, and then they ended up scoring a touchdown a few plays later.
Now, I knew that it was a 41-point favorite because I have that in my notes, but did you also know Southern Cal had a 35-game home winning streak and a 24-game Pac-12 winning streak going into this game? 41-point favorite.
Yeah, this might be one of the most underrated, shocking upsets of all time. Like, can you imagine how much somebody made who bet on Stanford winning?
Assuming anybody did.
Yeah, I don't know if they did, but if someone did, they're probably sitting pretty right now. Despite a USC upset, going into week 7, USC was still top 10, but California was now number 2 because of a touchback against Oregon in week 5, which is how they won. This is the highest Cal had been ranked since 1951. With LSU losing in triple overtime, this week Cal had a chance to become number 1. Even though their starting QB was ruled out like 10 minutes before the game, they're playing Oregon State. Oregon State was 3-3. Now, that's not bad, but when you have to almost be undefeated to have a chance at a championship, 3-3 is not that good. In the third quarter, Oregon State would stop California on the 1-yard line 3 times. Later, Cal would lose by a field goal, 31-28. And if I remember correctly, their quarterback could have just thrown the ball out of bounds, and they would have been able to kick a field goal, but he didn't. And that's partially why they lost. I talked about how Michigan fell apart after they got upset by Appalachian State. This will be some of the stuff that's edited out.
Easy for you to say, right?
But after starting 5-0, California would finish 6-6.
Wow.
And this is all because their quarterback wouldn't throw the ball out of bounds. And they got stopped on the 1-yard line like 3 times. Week 8. Now this is where the polls get interesting. Kansas is 13. Hawaii is 18. Kentucky is number 7. Arizona is number 8. It got crazier as Boston College was number 3, quarterbacked by Matt Ryan, who is most famous for blowing a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl.
I've got some crazy stats on the rankings from this year that 13 years later in 2020, you go, really? That's kind of strange.
And South Florida had risen all the way up to number 2. And you're going to notice a trend here with the upsets that is kind of weird. But number 2, South Florida, playing Rutgers, they would lose by a field goal. At 4th and 37, they had one last chance, but it was picked off. They lost 2 more one-score games after this, and they disappeared pretty quickly. And I don't think that they have been ranked that high ever since.
Yeah, some of the weird stuff I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if I'm going to step on you, but you mentioned a couple of them, so I'll say this. The weird number 2s. Now, we're talking in 2020, this is weird. And I don't really remember. I remember South Florida, and I remember a game I'm going to talk about in a minute. But all these teams were number 2 at one point in the year. California, South Florida.
They lost while they were number 2, not just they were number 2 at one point, or
Good point.
they were raised up to number 1, or they fell to like number 3 or number 4. They were all number 2 when they lost.
Great point. Boston College, as you mentioned, and maybe you'll get to this one in a little while. West Virginia was number 2 when they got upset by Pitt. All they had to do was beat Pitt, and they'd have gone to the BCS championship game, but they couldn't even beat Pitt. And final thing I'll say, the weirdest number 1 I've seen on this whole list, sometime during that year, Missouri was ranked number 1 until they lost.
We'll be getting to that. Boston College and Virginia Tech. Dad mentioned Boston College, or did he? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. They're number 2 this week, and after not scoring the whole game, Boston College got a touchdown, and they succeeded at an onside kick. Trying to force overtime, Matt Ryan tried to put them in field goal range, but he did a little more than that. He got them a last-second touchdown, and Boston College looked like they had snapped the number 2 curse until the next week. They would lose to Florida State. I typed this down wrong, and it said that Boston College won, but Boston College lost to Florida State. And also, Boston College would lose to Maryland the next week. They're not, even though we know that LSU had 2 losses and they won, this is basically most of the times it looks like after a number 2 team loses, they don't just lose, they collapse. This happened with South Florida, happened with Boston College, happened with Cal. Also this week, Ohio State who was number 1, got upset by unranked Illinois. This was the first time Illinois beat a number 1 team since 1956.
Oh.
So that's just a lot of crazy upsets. I can't really imagine Illinois beating Ohio State anytime soon, but maybe that's just because Ohio State's Ohio State. Then the next week, Oregon quarterback Dennis Dixon.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot his name was Dennis for a second. He got injured in the first quarter, and Oregon's chances were blown. This would be the 5th number 2 seed to lose in 7 weeks. Then we go to week 13. LSU loses in triple overtime again. Missouri and Kansas. I saw a video, and apparently this football rivalry goes back to before cars were invented in like the 1800s.
No, Parker, I wasn't around then.
But Kansas had never been ranked this high. Missouri hadn't even been ranked as high as number 4 since about 1960. So can you imagine Missouri and Kansas playing for their own destiny to see if they could win a college football championship? Even though they had a little snafus here and there, Kansas still had a chance to win. They were down 34-28, and then a safety for Missouri. And this would end the game, basically, as time was running out. And the final score would be 36-28. Kansas, number 2, lost.
And this is the year, if I remember correctly, and you may or may not know this, I don't see your notes, that Kansas actually won the Orange Bowl, I believe. I believe this is that year. You wouldn't think of it now because how bad Kansas is, but this is the year they were really good under Mark Mangino and actually won the Orange Bowl.
Mark Mangino, I saw a crazy stat about him. He was like 25-35 before 2007 as Kansas coach, and he was 11-0 up until this game. Week 14, here's Pitt in West Virginia. West Virginia, I heard there is like some stuff going on in their locker rooms and no one would get excited on the sidelines. They just seemed like they didn't want to be there. And all Pitt needed was 13 points, I guess. Another upset. Listen to this stat. From 1996 to 2006, only 4 times had both a 1 and a 2 team lost in the same week. The last 8 weeks of this season, it happened 3 times alone. That's kind of crazy that there are that many upsets, especially for number 2 seeds.
But all West Virginia had to do was win that game, and they would go to the championship game. I don't remember the point spread, but it was big.
All they had to do was score 14 points.
No doubt.
They couldn't do that.
And your stat you mentioned, the stat I found, I think it's the same as yours. Number 1 and number 2 had not lost in the same week since 1996. So we're talking 11 years. But it happened 3 times in 2007, including the final 2 weeks of the regular season. And the other stat I found, and I'll let you finish up, the number 2 team lost 7 times in the final 9 weeks of this season.
Yes. That was basically an extension of the stat I said where by week 11, 5 number 2 teams had lost in 7 weeks. So you basically just took it to the end of the season.
Right.
Now, if a fan of college football who knows what's going on right now, like what teams are good, they looked at this, they'd be like, oh, LSU and Ohio State, that's sort of normal. I don't know why it's so weird for them to be matched up. LSU had 2 losses, first of all. Both of them were in triple overtime, which is kind of crazy. Like, you know how many games go to triple overtime for college football? And then losing twice and still being in the championship? LSU would beat Ohio State 38-24, and they would win. This looks very normal to a fan who doesn't know anything about the college football about 2007. But if you go in and look at all of the rankings and the upsets, this is probably the craziest, weirdest, maybe even most exciting college football season ever. I mean, if you just want upsets where the underdog wins, this is your season.
So the year started out with Michigan losing to Appalachian State, and it ended up with a 2-loss team winning the national championship.
First time in a while. I forgot exactly. It might have been the first time ever, but I know it was the first time in a while.
It was just a crazy and bizarre season, and I wanted to go over those stats one more time. The weird number 2s were really, in 2007, they were it was normal. I really don't recall. I recall some of them, but not all of them. Number 2s that lost, Cal. Cal was number 2. Never think a million years. South Florida was number 2. Boston College was number 2. West Virginia was number 2. Missouri at one point was number 1 and lost. You had a 2-loss national champion. The number 2 team lost 7 times in the final 9 weeks. And all that started with Michigan losing to Appalachian State. I can still remember we're at the first house where you were born over in Kate's Cove. And you weren't born there, but first house that you lived in.
That was where we were.
Over on Kate's Cove. And I can still remember watching that game saying, oh, they got a chance. They're gonna win it. After all that, Appalachian State's gonna lose, and they blocked that field goal.
So I could come back on and talk about Georgia Tech and Cumberland, because that could be a whole 1-hour podcast on its own with all the stuff that was going on in that game.
You're always welcome to come on the podcast. Casey and I hope to have you on the video version of the podcast instead of this special edition. Want to get you broken in, get you used to talking to large numbers of people. We've had 7,717 viewers and listeners.
The trick is not to think about those 7,717 people.
Well, we're getting you ready for that debate team you're going to be on in high school, where you have to hold up your end of the argument and just not say, I'm right, and walk away like an 8th grader, right? All right, Parker, thank you very much for coming on. I know the folks out there appreciate this. They're college football lovers. And for Parker to be interested in a college football season that he was actually 1 year old when it happened, that warms my heart. He cares about the history and the fun, crazy facts. So all those hours you spend on YouTube aren't wasted.
Yeah, that's where I get most of my facts, actually.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if everybody out there knows it. Parker is the reason that we do video with our podcast now, because I watched him every day watch videos, and I thought, well, maybe he's watching videos of games like I would watch. No, he'll watch a video of a guy talking, just like you guys watch Casey and I doing that. So the younger folks prefer video, even if it's a video of someone talking, right, Parker?
Yeah, and they have highlights also.
Yeah.
But
we can I throw some stats up there and other stuff to keep it a little interesting, so you don't have to look at this face all night long. Thanks, Parker.
thank you.
And that's it for this special episode of the Slow Go Podcast featuring Parker Coleman. Parker will be back on the regular podcast sometime soon, hopefully.
For Georgia Tech and Cumberland, 222-0.